Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Salvation from Destruction podcast. In today's episode, I would like to welcome Dave Viar. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you? Well, thank you for welcoming me into Texas, guys. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you, too. This interview has been such a long time in the making. But hey, you're here, and I'm glad to have you here all the way from Chicago.
Yeah, I love you, man. I think you would know from our history, and we'll talk about that as we go along. You've impacted my life greatly. I think about you all the time. You accepted me for who I am, regardless of my shortcomings. And, man, I appreciate that.
I want to give people a little bit of background on who Dave Viar is. And the reason why you're here is you're a very respectable guy, one of the hardest working guys that I know, and just one of the most naturally funny guys that I've ever been around. I mean, you could hit a room and just start cracking everybody up. I give everybody an introduction. Dave is a Marine Corps veteran, and he served in Desert Storm. He holds several certifications in the trade of welding. He teaches at 2 local community colleges in the Chicagoland area, and he's a mechanical technology chairman and welding program coordinator at the schools that he teaches in. He won the award for Professor of the Year in 2022, and it's an absolute honor to have you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I grew up in Bridgeview, typical blue collar. I would say like a latchkey kind of child, right? You know, both my parents worked. So, you get home from school and go out to the garage and mess with dad's tools or play basketball or get a pickup football game going. I've always been very, I would say, active with people. And you know what? Here's something that not a lot of people know. I was a little fat kid growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was heavy. And I proved myself with my friends and my brother's friends by, playing football and basketball. I had a lot of friends growing up. And I think the ability to make people laugh made me feel a bit more comfortable because I probably wasn't so comfortable in my own body. I was heavy. I mean, I still am. I was always, like my mom would say, "Oh, you're just big boned," right? Which we all know.
Husky.
Yeah.
Remember Husky?
Yeah, from Sears, right? Some husky pants.
Yeah.
But, that was an excuse to make you feel good back in those days. They didn't send you to a therapist. Right. They just said, "Oh, you're big boned," or "You didn't lose your baby fat." So I was big, but I've always been big. Being in high school, I had friends that were on the wrestling team and played baseball, and I played football. And then I switched over to the swimming team, and I was a heavy little dude, but I swam the 500 in swimming.
Really?
Yeah, because I could swim. I don't know if it was the fat that held me up or whatever the case may be, but I never turned away from who I was. But I think I took different avenues and different approaches to life growing up, knowing I don't exactly fit in, which, I'm good with. But if somebody's making funny or something, they're saying that because they're lacking somewhere in their life. And as I got older, I learned if you surround yourself with great people, you're going to be successful. Before I went into the service, I was working at the time, and I'm not going to say I was down because I was not down, but I had this little chip that was I want to prove to people that I could do the hardest. I could be the best. And so what happened was my senior year in high school, I knew I was going to graduate early. I had plenty of credits, and I'm like, I'm going to show these naysayers what I can do. And granted, I didn't want to do it. I'll be the first one to tell you.
Really?
Anybody that in a wartime, anybody that's like, "Hey, I want to join the service to go to combat," that's not why I joined. I'm telling you that now. I didn't want to go to war. I did not. But there was this moment in my life where I sat in my room, and those days, when you sat in your room, you thought.
Right.
There was no TV. I had no phone.
Right.
And I sat there and I said, what can I do to prove that I am somebody? And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And nobody believed it. I'll be the first one to tell you. Everybody was like, no, you ain't. No way. I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it. Went and talked to a recruiter. And they're like, oh, but I was physically fit. I was fat.
Well, why did they give you that?
Because I wasn't very physically fit. I was heavy. I probably weigh the same now as I did in high school, but I was 5'8". It's a big difference.
Yeah.
I was always physical. I played hockey. I played football.
Yeah.
I swam. I was like that thick kid with some muscle underneath. But I was like, you know what? I could do it. I could do this. And so when I was a senior in high school, I went to talk to a recruiter. And at that point, I think I was so distraught and fed up that I wanted out. I wanted to change the scenery. I look back at it now, as you know, when you're a high schooler back in those days, you didn't have like the outlets that you have now with technology and stuff. I came to a moment in my life where I wanted to prove people wrong, and I wanted to be something. But I wanted to let everybody know that I could do something. And when boot camp came around, as any Marine could tell you, or anybody that's been through any kind of boot camp, I was like, this is crazy.
So what was that experience like? Do you remember day one, minute one?
So, it's funny, as time has gone on, I think I remember more. I think a lot of that stuff I blacked out. Or I remember, so those Marines, they give you a lock for your foot locker with a combination on there. And mine was 38-20-12. I'll never forget it.
And you still remember it.
And I still remember it because I never wanted to forget anything, especially my locker combination. Because if you couldn't open it, they'd open it for you.
Right.
So my social security number was. So those are the two numbers I've always remembered. And I think going in, I was in such a daze. Anybody that has gone, especially Marine Corps boot camp, because they just stress the shit out of you the whole time. I think going into it, I was like, I'm just going to push through it. I didn't have any kind of second thoughts. I never regretted it, but I always thought to myself, like, this is nuts. There's 100 recruits and everyone's getting clothes and paperwork. And I mean, it was so chaotic. I think a lot of that chaos is kind of like clouds your thoughts.
Right.
And then you get to your boot camp company and meet everybody and you start seeing familiar faces. So there's a little sense of belonging, but you're still out in the middle of nowhere. You're like, what is going on?
So how did you navigate it?
So I think my navigation process is I'm just going to do what they say. I'm going to the T, which I was always great at following rules, right? So I never had to worry about that. My biggest concerns were the physical fitness, keeping up with everybody. And it's funny, you're so worried about getting yelled at, what you could push through. Mm-hmm. I was heavy. So my sit-ups were okay. My pull-ups were not good, but I could run. I had endurance because of swimming and football.
Right. So
my 3-mile PT test, I'd crush it.
Really?
I was this little fat dude, just running. And everybody, I remember drill instructors being like, did you cheat? Because I did so good.
Well, how could you cheat?
I don't think you could. But, they were just surprised about this fat little dude running over the finish line, in 10th or 15th place out of the 90 recruits that were, I could run. I had really good endurance. Pull-ups, 5, 6, maybe. Right? They wanted to do 20. I'd be struggling.
Right.
Sit-ups, I think that they want 80 in a minute or what, I don't know. You'd have to do a certain amount of sit-ups. I would struggle on those, but I'd be able to crush out some as a fat little dude. So I think a lot of that, just not wanting to fail. I think in your life, failure is easy. It's very easy to give up, but I have an inner fire that never wanted to let, not only myself, but to let those people down that said I couldn't do it. It was like a driving force, right?
Your why. What's your why?
Yeah. Why? What is your purpose for being here? Because I had no purpose. I just wanted to
prove something.
Yeah, to show people that I could do it. I'm sure my numbers aren't correct, but I think I was 205 going in, 5'8", and I came out at 6'1".
Really?
I mean,
So you
I
actually grew
oh,
taller too.
you walk because you're standing up straight.
Yeah.
You're walking right. And
Right.
I ate all proteins and my breakfast. There was extra ration recruits, and they would get 5 eggs, extra toast, a double omelet, and I'd get like one hard-boiled egg and a slice of avocado.
That's it.
Yeah, that was it. And by 10 o'clock, I was fucking starving.
Right.
But I get it now. When I look back on it, they were serving me a purpose. They were like, hey, you're a little chubby. We got to slim you down.
Right.
And anybody that's been in the Marines, graduation day after 3 months, man, like everybody fits. You're all walking the same. You're all talking the same. They do such a good job at making you a team and making sure you're on point. And that took me, now remember, I was 17.
When you joined.
You got to remember, I was 17 when I graduated boot camp.
Oh, wow.
So not only did I graduate boot camp at 17, I came home at 17. I tried to reconnect with my friends at 17. And any 17-year-old boy coming out of the Marine Corps is not a 17-year-old boy in civilian life. Mm. So that, week or those 2 weeks I was home was so bad, so horrific to try to relate to anybody that was home that I was with before I had left, right? So number one, right off the bat, I'm coming home and I'm like an alien, like literally. Nobody recognized me. My parents came to my boot camp graduation, and I remember standing in front of my parents and I was like, Mom, and they were looking at me and didn't even recognize me. So you're coming home to another world, but you're a little bit better, right? You might not look at other people the same because you don't. You might not fit in the same because you don't. But this is where you need to be. Like I knew coming out of boot camp and getting ready to go to infantry school that this is where I need to be. I saw family, immediate family, cousins, and everybody knew I was home. I visited a couple of friends and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe how you look. I was very out of place. And so after that, I had gone into to SOI, which is School of Infantry. They kind of started separating us out. I went into machine gunner school, and I was still 17. And they're like, you're going to be a machine gunner. I'm like, I'm all in. I'm all in.
So how did they choose you to be a machine gunner?
If I remember correctly, and this could be crazy, and you can call me a liar, but I have this feeling that we were all lined up and they were going down a line. And I remember his name was Corporal Lovell. Corporal Lovell was an instructor at the School of Infantry. And for some reason, man, he just had like a hard on for me. And I liked him. Like I had such a deep respect for him. Mm-hmm. And I remember him going down the line. He's like, oh, you're 0311. You're on 0311. 0311. And he looked at me and was like, 31.
What's an 0311 for people?
So that's just your basic rifleman. That's, you could be a saw gunner or a Mark 19, which is an automatic grenade launcher, or just a basic rifleman. And I remember him coming up to me and he was like, fire, fucking 0331. And then it was like 0311. I felt like this dude was like picking me out of a crowd. And if he's still alive, man, I would love for him to reach out. I mean, he was the worst instructor there. But for some reason, like him and I would always like conversate on the side. I don't know if I picked machine gunner or whatever the case was, but for some reason, like in the back of my mind, I remember Corporal Lovell saying, you're going to be an 0331. And so they kind of separate you at the School of Infantry. So all the riflemen go to one school, and then heavy weapons goes to another. So it's machine gunners, mortarmen, detonation guys. And I'm telling you, Andy, you give a 17-year-old boy a machine gun, and you got it made.
Really?
I mean, you got it made.
I would have loved that.
I was like, I can't believe. And not only do you learn a machine gun, you shoot a 50 cal, shoot a Mark 19 grenade launcher, you throw grenades. I mean, it was every boy's dream. Any boy that is hands-on, I loved crawling under barbed wire. I loved it all. And for some reason, I always thought to myself, I wanted to be a machine gunner in an infantry platoon. Not only did I want to go into the hardest, being a Marine, but I wanted to do the hardest job. And don't get me wrong, snipers, their job was nothing like what I did. Their job was so much harder. I wanted to be top rung infantryman, which was an M60 machine gunner. So I graduated infantry school. You get a week of leave. And then as soon as we got back, they're like, hey, this is where you're going. And I'm like, this is crazy. Still wasn't even 18 yet. And go overseas, learn a lot. I dry heaved a lot, cried a lot. I was telling the story earlier about going in and going into on top of a Humvee as a 50 cal gunner. And I remember the shield being so riddled with bullets. And I was like, clearly the person in front of me is no longer here, so this is why I'm doing it. So I'll be the first one to tell you, I wanted to be at home. When you're over there and you're seeing that lifestyle and you're seeing the way people live, it's such a culture shock, not just because of what you're doing, but what you see other countries are doing. And so I wanted to be home. I miss, again, ridicule me. Anybody that says otherwise, the amount of throwing up and crying I did to want to be home was outstanding. I give myself credit because I wanted to be at home. Any Marine will tell you the MOP level gear, that's what they give you.
Explain what that is, just real.
So MOP level gear is it's a gas mask and a suit that will protect you from a gas attack. And any Marine will tell you, we got hand-me-downs. And I remember we had thought we had gotten gas. So we all donned our MOP level gear. It's $100. It's 100. If not, it's 110. It's hot. And they call gas. So it's going down the line, right? You see the infantrymen up top. We're providing cover fire. They're like, gas, gas, gas. And it's coming down the line. You got to put on, it's a snowsuit with a gas mask. And I'm sitting on top of a Humvee with the sun beating on me. And I'm trying to get all my stuff. And I'm sweating. I'm scared. I'm dry heaving. I'm looking around. I'm wondering what's going on. And this is the most developing story I can tell you of how it defined me as a human. So it's going down the line, right? You see everybody dropping all their stuff and throwing on all their gear and their suits and gas masks. And you're like, I'm looking around to see people are dying or throwing up. And I remember I'm on top of this Humvee and I got a 50 cal in front of me. I'm like kind of like leaning on the 50 cal. I'm trying to get all my shit on. Like I'm bumping my elbow. And I ain't gonna lie to you, man, I'm bumping my elbow like on the shield.
Right.
And it hurts. I'm trying to get I'm in a full-blown panic. And then what they do is you don and clear a gas mask. So you hold the filters, you blow out real heavy, and then you release the filters, and then you suck in, then you're clean, right? And so I'm down in this gas mask, and I don't know, there's probably some throw up in there. My elbow hurts. I'm on top of this Humvee. I'm looking around. Nobody's moving. I'm like, fuck, we're all going to die. We're getting gassed. I'm going to start barfing and like what they call in the Marine Corps, the funky chicken. Like I'm going to fall out of this thing, shake around on the ground, and then that's going to be it. I'm on this thing, and we're waiting on fire, and we're waiting on a missile to come in, like what you see in the movies. And I'm sitting on this Humvee. I'm like, this is the worst moment of my life. Of all the shit I've ever been through in my life, right now is the lowest point. I can hardly see. My mask is fogged up,
Sweating.
I don't even, like if we got gas, I probably would have died because I don't even know if it's sealed, right? I got this MOP level gear on. It's like this big bulky suit. And then they're like, gas clear. They clear us. I'm watching front of the line. They start taking their stuff off. I take my stuff off. And wouldn't you know it, it's 100 degrees out, sun shining. And my MOP level gear is charcoal lined. So now I'm on top of a Humvee. I take my MOP level gear off, and I'm covered in charcoal. And so now it's like going from a microwave into an oven. And I'm like, this is insane. And I can't shower. I can't get it off. They're like, we got to keep moving. And so here I am, scared, thinking I got gassed, right?
Right.
I'm going to melt down. That wasn't the case. They're shooting at us. People are getting shot at.
Right.
I'm covered in charcoal. It's 100 degrees. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I want my mom. I want a puppy to pet. I mean, whatever the case was. You know, anybody that's like, oh, I was such a big hard ass. That was not me. You know, I'm sitting behind the 50 cal. I'm checking my ammo. I'm racking the stuff. I'm like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane.
Do you ever have that moment like, what did I do? But did you ever have that? Okay, I proved myself. Can I go home now?
Yeah, every day. I think my moments were this. It was actually comical because I think I've always found, as you know, I will always try to find the lighter things in life to laugh about. And I couldn't have told you how miserable I was. If I were to equate it to any point in my life, I mean, I've had those points, but it was comical how miserable somebody can get. I mean, comical.
Did you ever find your battle rhythm, though? Did you ever, like, finally get comfortable?
I wouldn't say I was ever comfortable. I think that there was like a humorous comfort level with everybody I was around, but you knew there was always a sense of nervousness. I think a lot of men will find humor when they're nervous.
Is that where you found your humor, do you think? Because there's been several times, and we'll get into this in a little bit too, where, and in the time that I've known you, where the most inopportune times, you're either relaxed or you're just funny.
What I learned over there, it was so bad that the only thing I could do was find something funny. I always wanted some kind of an outlet. I'd be looking around and, man, guys would be like just sweating and asking for water. And I would find humor in those little moments that, regardless of how bad it was, you find a moment where you could smile and you could make somebody laugh just to get a sense of normalcy.
Right.
Because life is difficult. No matter where you are, people go through so much and people look at things different. I kind of came to a point, especially in the service, where I knew that this is the worst it's going to get at that point in my life, right? You know, my 18th birthday's coming up. I'm on top of a Hummer. I'm covered in charcoal. It's 100 degrees. Like, there's gotta be a silver lining, right? I always had an outlook for some kind of positivity. I know dark times, but those dark times are the dark times that you're going through. And if you just give it a moment, I'm talking 10, 20 seconds to take a breath, to look around and find something funny or good that you're going through. And I get it. You know, people go through horrific times. They do. I'll never discredit a bad time. I've never looked at somebody and been like, or compared what I've gone through. I get it. But I think that there's a small moment to where you can look around, and I made a couple guys laugh at that moment, and I had some normalcy. I think they had some normalcy. That regardless of what's happening, if it's a horrible hour, if you get 5 minutes of a moment, I think you kind of recenter yourself. And one of the things I have is the ability to resonate with somebody and change that moment of horrificness or terror into something that's a little bit lighter hearted.
And to me, that's a gift.
You know,
because not too many people have that ability to find some humor or to go to a place of positivity or laughter in the time of a crisis or in the time of fear. A lot of people get caught up in that moment and they can't pull back from that. And they're just so caught up in the moment that sometimes they'll miss that little glimmer of light, that little glimmer of hope, that little giggle that you'll have. And those people like yourself who can find that humor or that little bit of light in that darkness, that's something special that not everybody has. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so let's fast forward, okay?
Yeah.
So we'll come out of the service. came home, went to welding school. Life is going on. Doing great. Got married, had 2 kids. I'm 33. So I got out of the service, I was 21. Just doing what I thought was normal. Just crushing life, man. Went to school for welding. I got mentored by the main welding instructor there. His name is Jim Greer, who's a huge friend of mine now, one of my best friends, just a great mentor. And then I'm like 32, 33. I'm doing great at life as a welder. Didn't want to go to school. Thought about going back, but I was like, man, I'm doing so good. I'm welding. I'm not feeling so good. I'm driving home from work. I'm feeling sick. I'm like, man, I'm gonna vomit. Like, we've all been there. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna barf. Didn't eat anything crazy. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. I hop out of my car. I run over to the side of the road, and I throw up everywhere. And that throw up is blood. I mean, blood. I'm like, fuck, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Go home. I tell my wife at the time, she's a nurse. I'm like, hey, I threw up blood. She's like, all right, well, let's get you over to a GI, gastrointestinal doctor.
Yeah.
And at the time, my kids were young, coaching hockey. I go into the GI doctor, and I'm 34, 35. He's like, I don't know, I think it's acid reflux or something else. I'm like, all right, I'm good with that. I never wanted to go in the first place, right? So I go back to work. I'm welding for a medical facility at the time. And then at that time, I go into work. I feel great. Nothing's wrong. A couple days go by. I feel good. I eat lunch. I go to the bathroom, and it's all blood again. And I'm like, this is crazy. Maybe I was thinking it was the scope, whatever the case was. And I call her.
Call your wife.
Yeah. I'm driving home, and I'm sick again. I'm like, I got to barf again. And I throw up, and it is purple blood. I mean, it is blood. And I'm like, something ain't right. I call her on the phone. I'm like, listen, I threw up blood. And she's like, okay, just go. No. And I tell her, I'm like, something ain't right. And for me to say that,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm on the side of the road. She's like, all right, we're going to make an appointment. Why don't you head home? So I head home. I feel fine. Besides throwing up blood, I am concerned, but as a guy, I'm like, oh man, I got acid reflux or something. So now that was on a Thursday or Friday. Friday comes along. I threw up a couple more times, and it's kind of like mixed, right? It's like half food, a little bit of blood in there. I'm going to the bathroom. There's a little bit of blood. I'm like, fuck, it's going away. I'm good. Saturday comes around. They schedule a PET scan. They're like, hey, we just want you to come in. Let's just check. So the GI doctor thought it was just acid reflux. And this is why I'm telling everybody that's listening to this, get a second opinion. I go in, and this is a Saturday morning. They run a PET scan. A PET scan, if you don't know, it's a sugar substance, and it'll glob onto cancer cells. I get the PET scan. I walk out. I got to go to hockey practice. I go to hockey practice. I feel fine. I'm not going to lie, dude. I was fine. Mm-hmm. Besides throwing up blood, I had no fevers, no nothing. I go to hockey practice, and halfway through hockey practice, Carrie calls me. She's like, you need to come home. I'm like, I'll come home after practice. Right. She's like, please, you need to come home. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, I didn't even think it was me. I thought something bad happened. Yeah. I'm like, I'll be there. I walk in the house. She's at the kitchen table, and she's bawling. I mean, bawling. She's like, you have cancer. And I'm like, okay. She's like, you don't understand. She, at the time, the doctor that she was working for, who she still works for, called her and was like, Dave is sick. And she's like, what do you mean by sick? He's sick. They ran the PET scan, and if you don't know, it kind of like glows. Well, my whole midsection glowed, like all cancer.
So what were you diagnosed with?
So I was after the fact, I was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma, but they knew that it was Burkitt's lymphoma because after that PET scan, I had gone in. They knew I had a tumor. They didn't know exactly what kind. They shove a tube down my throat. I can't eat. They do a colonoscopy, and they're like, "We got to get a sample of that tumor to know exactly what it is." So we were going on vacation, and I'm like, "I'm going." It was a fishing vacation, and everyone's like, "What has happened?" I'm like, "I'm going on vacation." I'm like, "Pull these tubes out. Let's just go." We're up in Michigan, and the Mayo Clinic that got my biopsy. So they called Carrie, and they're like, "Your husband has Burkitt's lymphoma. He has to come back." And so we're on vacation. I'm
Like that quick, they wanted you back.
"Oh yeah, if this is it, I want to fish it out. The kids are there. Let's not scare anybody." We get back home. I go into Loyola because LaGrange was like, "You got to go to Loyola." I go to Loyola. I get some blood drawn. I see their head oncologist. He's like, "You have Burkitt's lymphoma." I'm like, "Awesome. What do we got to do?" He's like, "You got to start chemo tomorrow." And I'm like, "I got to go to work tomorrow." And he's like, "Listen, if you don't come back tomorrow, you'll be dead by Saturday."
That bad.
That bad. And I'm like, "Don't do this." He's like, "Listen, if you're not back tomorrow, you start chemo tomorrow." So I went into high dose chemo, and I was fine, Andy. I'm telling you, I felt fine. I started high dose chemo on a Wednesday morning, called work, and said, "I got to take a sick day."
A sick day.
A sick day.
A sick.
Yeah, a sick day.
One.
Packed a bag, went in for chemo, and started high dose chemo at Loyola for 9 months. It was a death sentence. And I'm laughing about it because I'm here talking to you about it, but the severity of it has still, it is still not reached, a pinnacle for me. Like I still got, anybody that's gone through cancer, I got a power port. They had to put a power port in and blood transfusions, and and everything else that I had gone through. And still today, I look back at it, I was like, I was never gonna die.
And I want to touch on that, because you and I have discussed that at great length. But to kind of put in perspective the type of guy that you are, and like we said earlier, and for those who don't know, you and I met during hockey. It wasn't even really a league; it was more of a club. It's called Old Time Hockey, and we started skating together in about 2013, and that's where we really met. And we had that chemistry, and we just talked a lot. We laughed a lot. And you always had that sense of humor. But I remember you walking into a locker room one day, and all of us are getting dressed, and that's the beauty thing. Anybody who knows about hockey and hockey players and has been around the sport, it's such a beautiful, fun sport. And when you're in a hockey locker room, you can get guys talking about their relationships with their wives or their girlfriends. You'll have other guys talking about work. You'll have other guys talking about politics and everything in between. And it's just a good sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And I remember that particular morning, and this is the type of guy that you are, and you were already diagnosed, and where everybody's just joking around, laughing like we usually do, talking about lines and what we're going to do, and good game and everything like that. And we're about ready to go on the ice, and you're like, "Hey guys, just real quick, yeah, I'm going to be gone probably for a couple months, and I'll be back." And everybody's like, "Okay, what are you, vacation? You're just going to take some time off? You injured? What's up?" And you're like, "No, I was just diagnosed with cancer, but don't worry about me. I'm not going to die, and I'll be back pretty soon. And probably just give me a couple months, and I'll be back." The whole room stopped. It was like in the movies where you hear like the record scratch, and everybody just kind of looked at you, and all the oxygen in the room got sucked out. And we're like, "Bro, are you okay? Are you going to be okay?" And you're like, "No, I'm probably going to die, but come on, let's have a good game. Let's go. What are the lines?" And you just walked out of the locker room, and I remember you're on the ice warming up, and we're all stopped. Or it was me, Grant, Cruiser, a bunch of Lou, a bunch of other guys that were out there. And we're all just kind of looking at each other in the locker room, and you're already out there warming up, and you're like skating by the locker room going like, "Hey, are you guys going to come out here or what?" That was just remarkable. And we were on the bench, and we were looking at you, and none of us were really seeing anything because we were in shock, and we were worried about you because we know the type of guy that you are. and you brought a presence to the ice and to the locker room, and you're always so funny. And this was just like a speed bump to you. So when you got that diagnosis and what you went through, and I want you to touch on where you knew that you were going to be okay, or you weren't going to talk about your journey through that.
Okay, so I'm sure you remember, and one of the hardest times that I had was like in the beginning. One of the things that always bothered me is, guys would come up and be like, man, I'm going to say a prayer for you. And I would say the same thing to anybody. I'd be like, hey, don't waste them on me, man. Use them for somebody that needs them. And, going into it, I never once, it's funny because you hear the cancer word. And my father had cancer. We've talked about this. And my father, who is by far the toughest guy, I mean, I don't even know how he does it anymore, but I look at these men, and I mean men, way better men than I am. And I look at them, my father had cancer before I got it. And I went into that, and when I was diagnosed, what's funny, like if I were to go back, being on top of that Humvee and the severity of that situation, I still made light of that situation, kind of like how I made light of my situation because it was so severe. The only way I knew how to approach it was with this positive attitude, knowing that, and I mean this, I went into it thinking that this is the last time I could do anything. I never thought I was going to die. Number one, anybody that says I never went into it. However, everybody that was around me and the doctors were like, listen, this is bad. They kept saying it like, you don't need to do this high dose chemo. When you get a power poured in, it's because it's so they can dump you with so much chemo and other stuff. And never once was I ever to that point where I thought, I can't believe I'm going to die, because I never even thought about it. Like, even when I was in the service, like I said, going through some of that stuff, I was always had this outlook like, man, this is going to be a great story at the end of the day. To be honest with you, the problem that I had was when I was diagnosed was the effect that others had and the way that they reacted to me. Like the guys in the locker room, hey, we're going to say a prayer for you, man. They sent me shirts and these cards. I mean, there was people that was coaching at hockey and they would come and cut my grass. And I was like, I'm not dying. I mean, I was. All I had to say was I don't want any treatment, and I wouldn't be here to talk about it. But never once did I think to myself, this is so bad, I can't go through it. Everybody that's dealt with doctors, they come in and they like beat around the bush. And I remember, and I mean, they flew a guy in, an oncologist, to deal with just my case because it was such a rare cancer. And I remember looking at him being like, listen, just say what you want to say. Fucking say it. And I remember swearing at him and being like, if you got to swear, swear. I know you're a doctor, but tell me what you think.
Right.
And he was like, I think you can make it. You got to be positive. I'm like, I'm not negative. I don't see any negativity on this whatsoever. I don't want to go through it, right? I don't want to go through chemo. I don't. I don't want to be in a hospital. I want to be at home. I like my toilet paper. I like my water. Those small little things in life. That's what I wanted. Never once when I went into that hospital, and I'd be in there for weeks. I mean, weeks. Never once did I think that this was my end-all be-all. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I'm not going to discredit anything that anybody's ever went through. And I'm not saying what I went through was the hardest that people can go through. But what I do know is what I have gone through at that moment for those 9 months was absolutely more than most humans can take. There was a point at the end of my chemo when I was literally bleeding out of every hole. I couldn't be by my dogs, couldn't play with my kids, couldn't get cut, couldn't get burned, couldn't go to work. My whole life was turned upside down. And I mean that. from day one. They're like, this is what's going to happen. Barfing in buckets, not being able to go to the bathroom. I could hardly walk half the time. I would always look at it like, I got this. Challenges are hard, but those small challenges, if you were to break it down, right, and micromanage, I know this sounds stupid, right? So if you were a manager of cancer, which I was the manager, and then what I would do is I would micromanage those horrific moments into these little championship rounds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like a phenomenal way of looking.
You know, I would go in for a week of high dose chemo, and I'm talking high dose. You know, I'd be plugged in Monday through Friday. Come Saturday, I'd be spent. I'd be like, all right, I know Saturday I'm going to be jacked up. I know I can't move. I lost all my hair. I mean, anybody that's gone through chemo can tell you the same thing. But what I would do is going in. I knew at the start of the week I'd be good. I'd be able to walk. And they had like this real horrible exercise bike. You know, a billion people. I can't believe the pedals worked. And I'd go in and I'd listen to music because I wanted some normalcy. But what I would do is I would micromanage those little horrific moments and then find the greatness out of those little moments. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So the whole moment was horrific. But if you break that down into little bad moments where you could find some greatness out of those little moments, those little greatness moments would add up and then get me through what's going to come next. If that makes sense.
100%.
I know it sounds weird.
No, not at all.
But if you were to find something, like I remember, and this is so stupid, I can't handle anything going in my eyes. I can't do it. I can't do eye drops. I can't do anything.
Not even eye drops.
I can't even do eye drops. And my nurse would come in and I'd get shots in my stomach. And I think those shots were because I was laying down so much so my blood doesn't coagulate, whatever.
Yeah, blood thinner.
And so she would come in and would do like six shots in my stomach and I'd be fine with that. She's like, now I got to do your eye drops. I'm like, nope, it ain't happening. She's like, do you know what you're going through? And I'm like, I can't do eye drops. She's like, Dave, and she was fucking awesome. She'd sit with me at night, read me stories. And she was like, it's just an eye drop. I can't do it. She's like, what if I put it in the corner? I can't do it. Because, you know, like when you're a kid, right? Yeah. You put it in the corner. And she'd be like, you got tattoos. You've been in the Marine Corps. I just gave you 6 shots in your stomach, and you can't take an eye drop?
Nope.
And I'm like, nope. Can't do it. If I were to think back on it, though, like I would micromanage my misery into knowing that I would have a celebratory moment at those points. I wasn't necessarily fighting for survival. I was more or less fighting for a moment of normalcy and being who I was. I think the biggest problem I had is that those people that would come and see me wanted Dave, wanted jovial, idiotic Dave to talk crap and tell stories and make fun of people. And I wanted that so bad, and I wanted to be normal so bad, that I think what pushed me through is knowing that light at the end of the tunnel, not the victory of beating cancer, you know, because I didn't beat it, the doctors beat it. I was just a vessel for them to do what they got to do. I had that attitude like, fucking bring it. Bring it. You want to go high dose? Bring it.
Yeah, but you give yourself a little bit of credit too. Yeah, they facilitated the treatment, and I get it with doctors. You know, I'm married to a nurse too. I salute all the people in the medical field, but also too, I definitely think that a lot of it had to do with your mindset. Don't discredit that.
No, I'm not saying I'm not discrediting that, but I'll be honest with you. I mean, I knew I was sick, but never once did I ever think I was sick. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, growing up, you see somebody with cancer and they're fragile and dying. You know, I'd go home and I would show up to work and my boss, Jim Gray at the time, would be like, dude, you're great.
And you would go to work through all that.
Yeah, I would still show up. He's like, get out. You can't be here. I mean, I'd be great. No hair. I'd look like Mr. Clean. That's great. And I'm like, please, let me be around. Let me smell the smoke. Let me talk to people. And be like, all right, but after that, you got to get out of here. I wanted people to know that, granted, what I was going through, and I mean this, and a lot of this had to do with my boys. Regardless if you have boys or daughters, I looked at my boys, and I know I was not an easy father. I tried to instill in them how hard life can be. But I wanted them to know that I'm going through this, but you could still live a life, right? No matter how hard your life gets, you still have to discipline your kids. And I look at pictures of when I was sick, walking down the hallway at Loyola, and my one kid's holding my hand and my other kid's holding my IV pole. It's gut wrenching. Like, what were they thinking, right? And I remember walking with them in the hotel, in the hospital, and thinking, I need to let these soon-to-be men know that you can do it. I'll never compare what I've gone through to anybody else. I just won't do it. However, I feel like when I get complaints or people complain or bitch about stuff, I'm like, I can relate. I thrive on being able to educate people and finding a common ground to where I could look at you and be like, I could relate. Like, I know you're going through some shit, but I've also been through some stuff. So let's just talk about it. I've always looked at it as no matter what hardship I can go through, if I can take it on that hardship and then change somebody else or give somebody else a better outlook on life, I'm all for it. I think at the end of the day, this is why I teach. If I could change somebody's life a little bit for the better, I'm 100% in. If I can get somebody to look at me and be like, I appreciate your story and I want to be better, I would do anything. I would go through that again, knowing that I could make somebody better.
The one thing that I found astounding was you went through all of this treatment. You went through cancer. You beat it by the grace of God. And after you recovered from it, I remember you started working out like an animal. And you were always a good hockey player before you got sick. You always had that hockey sense. And that was something that I didn't really have, but you always knew where to go on the ice and when. And a lot of that stuff you can't really teach. But when you decided to come back, like we're doing CrossFit, and you were working on your cardio, you were working on your strength. And I stayed in touch with you during your treatment, and I just wanted to check in with you every once in a while. I remember when you're like, "Hey man, I'm going to come back. I want to start skating again. I miss you guys." And I remember you telling me that you were working out a lot, um, and when you came back, you were a completely different person for the positive. You were a completely different player. You stood out because you were working out so hard, and you were one of the top scorers, and you got so much faster, better, stronger, and you were a force to be reckoned with. And I remember there were games where you would get 2, 3, 4 goals. And just knowing that you were out there and you came back, you inspired that whole club. And I remember just hearing guys on the bench just going, look at Dave. Look at Dave, man. And we were rooting for you. And we would try to give you passes, and you were just always there. And you and I had a chance to play together quite often. And oh yeah, and you would always find that open ice, or you would find me and Lou, and vice versa. And we had some great times and great laughs. And then what was crazy was then we signed up. You and I both signed up to do the Payless Half Marathon.
No, tell the truth. Tell the truth.
What?
You signed up and you're like, hey, you should do this. And for all your listeners, you need to tell the truth. We didn't sign up. You're like, I want you to do this.
So I was kind of working out kind of heavy at that time too. And I had this wild hair like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should go run a half marathon. And I'm not a runner. Anybody who knows me, I'm not a runner. I'm not a good runner. I'm clunky. I'm terrible. No form or anything. And I remember I was kind of hemming and hawing with it. And it was actually Kelly, my wife. I remember like, should I do this? Should I not do it? Next thing you know, I'm actually at work. And all of a sudden I get a ding on my email. And it's like, congratulations, you signed up for the Payless Half Marathon. I'm like, I did? So I called my wife. She's like, yeah, you can do it. You're ready. I signed you up. Have fun. So misery loves company, right? So I call you up and I go, yeah, I'm doing a Payless Half Marathon. You want to do it? And you're like, do I? I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I don't think you asked. I don't see. This is funny. I don't remember this. I don't remember you asking.
So I remember again when we're looking at the map of the course, and you and I realized that now we're going to have to run 13.1 miles, right? You just look at me at one point. Remember, you had like the map or something in your hand, and you just drop it, and you look at me, and you're like, "That is so far."
I said, "Archer, we got to run to Archer and back. That's so far."
What did you get me into? What are we doing? And then I remember we took off, and the one thing about you, I don't even think we were done with the first mile, and you already had me laughing with some of the things that you were saying. And when I'm running, I don't like talking, and I'm a big talker, obviously. But when I'm running and I'm trying to concentrate, I don't like to talk. And I just remember looking over at you at one point, and I'm like, bro, you got to shut up. And because you're making me laugh so hard. And again, it's that getting through adversity and realizing that we have a big task now in front of us. And what did you do? You dealt with it with humor. And now I could appreciate it. But at the time.
All right, well, let's tell the real story. Let's tell the real story.
What's the real story?
So if I remember correctly, and I think I'm pretty accurate on this. And I remember you being like, "Hey, you should come out. Have you ever ran?" I'm like, "Dude, I hate running." And specifically, I remember thinking to myself, "Man, if this motherfucker can do it, I could do it."
Right.
Your story's a little skewed. You're coming off as a nice guy, and I think you kind of baited me in to running it because I hate running.
I hated running too.
And so the first time we ran it, we ran it, and I ran mine in like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Right. I was being about 10 minutes behind you, though.
Yeah, because in the turnaround. Yeah. I remember coming out of the turnaround and seeing you.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I hate you."
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember specifically looking at you and being like, "This is your idea."
Right. I remember that too.
And then we finished, and then we went out drinking and stuff. And then, unfortunately, I was like, I could beat that, which was stupid. I had this stupid little bug in me that was like, "Hey, I could beat cancer. I could go back and play hockey. I could beat this stupid ass time." And then you're like, "They're doing it again."
All right.
And I was like, "Oh, I hate him. I hate him." And I'm like, "I'm going to do it." Because I remember you were training.
Yeah. And actually, too, yeah, because I was working at a CrossFit gym myself in New Lenox.
Right. That's right.
In New Lenox, yeah. And a shout out to, and that was a great gym, too, Jared Viar, CrossFit New Lenox. They really got me.
Yeah, because I think I was doing CrossFit with John. You were doing your CrossFit.
Yeah, and that was, at the time, that's what really got me in shape. And all those trainers there at that gym were absolutely fantastic because I remember I did a Spartan race with a bunch of those people at that gym. I thought I was going to die. But then fast forward, and I was literally only at that gym maybe like 3-4 weeks. But then once I really started working hard, and I think
it's funny that you bring that up because I did that Spartan race and then I did that mud run.
But the thing is that we both did it twice. We both did it twice.
Yeah,
and
reluctantly.
Yeah.
But
we did it.
My first time, I was at 2:15. I was like, I got to be under 2 hours. And then the second time we did it, I'm like, I'm going to crush it.
And you did. You did.
Yeah, I got like 1 hour and 59 minutes. I remember seeing the clock at the end. I'm like, no, I'm dying. I'm going to die, but I'm going to do this.
You did. You shaved a lot of time off that time. I think I only shaved off like 3 or 4 minutes.
But you know what was funny, Andy, is I think back at those times, and again, I don't want to keep going back to this, but that was one of those things that in life, I've learned lessons of struggle. I've made a million bad decisions. I mean, literally, probably a million. And every bad decision I make, regardless of what I mean, you know me. I say stupid stuff. I do stupid things, and I'm not always the greatest. And I think to myself, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. I could have raised my boys better. I could have been a better dad or a better husband, and whatever the case is. And going through cancer and being in the service, I'm so good. Here's where I think my life benefits, and I mean this. It's not about the good I do, because doing good should be normal. Doing right by other people should be normal. What I've gained the most education on is making a mistake, chewing it down, knowing I made that mistake, and then making right by that mistake. So many mistakes. But those half marathons, the going back to hockey, getting through chemo, those championships, and I mean those are like little championships.
Absolutely.
Right? Nobody else celebrates. I go home, as you know this, I can't walk up my stairs and I'm like, fuck, I won.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I won that day. I won that moment. I never thought I could do that. Who would want to run 13 miles? Who's going to, right? Somebody getting chased by a panther. I think those little championship, whatever, call them what you will. I think those little moments of where I've won my moment, because it was something I thought I might not be able to do. In my life, I've always wanted to be that guy that people look up to. And not only do I want to be looked up to for what I'm doing right, but I also need those people that are looking up to me to know what I've done wrong. And I try not to hide my wrongs.
Mm-hmm. Well, you inspire so many people, and that's why you're here, because I think you do have such a powerful message that someone's going to need to hear. And you inspired me, and you inspired so many people, especially at hockey. And I know the people that you work with even to this day, and the kids that you teach. I want to get into that here in a minute too, is to see what you went through and to hear what you went through, and then how much you bounced back and came back stronger. Just in that's a life lesson in itself. You came back stronger, harder, tougher, mentally, physically, spiritually. Even though I may not say it, they're watching and they're looking. And I can only attest to the guys when we were skating, when you came back. They're like, wait a second, this guy just was sick and you're coming back flying. You had 2 extra gears. That charged us up. That made us play harder. That made us enjoy the little things in life. That made us thank our blessings at the end of the day. And just saying, hey, you know what? Maybe when we crap about the little things, maybe we should just shut up and just deal with it, because here you are doing what you were doing and doing what you did, and then coming back and running 2 half marathons. That's no easy feat. So yeah, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes, whether it be in my personal life, my professional life, whatever it is. I constantly make mistakes. But like you said, when you take a moment and you reflect on that, and it's okay to be humble. And there's times where I've had to come hat in hand to bosses, to my kids, to my wife, to friends. I've had to come hat in hand and go, hey, you know what? I got nothing. And you know what? I'm sorry. I apologize. I was wrong. And I'll take accountability for what I did. And sometimes, you know what? That's hard. And then when you have to self-reflect on those mistakes, that's not easy to do, to kind of look yourself in the mirror and go, you know what? I suck. Right? Like right now, I made a mistake. I was wrong. But like you said, you learn from it, you put it in your pocket, and you move on. And if you could teach somebody, whether it be your boys, whether it be somebody that you're at school with or teaching, you lead by example and you lead by your experience, and you're humble. And you're one of the most humble guys too that I know. And that resonates with people. And that goes a long way with people, and that sticks with people, especially when a guy who's been there, done that, won the t-shirt. You know what I mean? You've been there.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from what I have learned in my short/long life. Failure, I think, is judged on different levels of who you're talking to and where you're with in life. And failure obviously makes you better. And I failed at a lot of stuff, man. I'm so good at eating crow and swallowing my failures that I look past on anybody's failures, regardless if I'm dealing with students. I travel all over the country. I've traveled all over the world, and I teach, and I run into people, and I go and do talks, and seminars, and I've ran into people with doctoral degrees, which I know are way more educated than I am, and I get it, but they're asking me for advice. So I've always been humbled in the fact that regardless of where you've been and what you've done, there's a part of a human that you can relate to, regardless of their background, regardless of your background. And this is why I love teaching. There's nothing more rewarding than having a student coming back and saying, listen, I got into this union. I'm making so much money. I can't thank you enough for what you've done. And really all I did was show them some skills, But every once in a while, I'll get a student that comes back and, hey, I'm sure you don't remember this, but in your class you were saying this, and it resonated with me. And I want you to know that it changed my life. And I'll be honest with you, I look at them like, I don't remember saying that. I think the funny thing is when you deal with humans, when you break a human down, regardless of where they come from or what they have or what they got at the bank or what they drive, I don't know if you ever heard, I tell everybody, when I was like, I can't believe you're talking to that person. I'm like, unless that dude flies into his pants in the morning, he's the same guy that I am.
Right.
I mean, they're no different. No matter what you have, you're the same. No matter where you go home to at night. I tell everybody, no matter what you do today, no matter the impact you think you're doing, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. No matter who you think you are. So take those little moments and try to help somebody. But I have been very fortunate because I've had a lot of people help me. The mistakes I've made, people have bailed me out, people have worked with me, pat me down. I'm aggressive.
No.
I've been told, and I've had these moments to look at other humans and find some kind of common ground, right? If it's you guys at hockey, I am by far, I don't want to say the worst because I'm not the worst.
No.
But
by any stretch of the imagination.
But third of the worst. But I could look at you and know that you're better, and I can humble myself. But I could find a spot where I can win. You know what I'm saying? It's you talk about the greatest hockey players that we've ever played with, and I go to the bench. I'll tell you the story. We were playing hockey, and I didn't even know Lou that well. And he had missed like a bar down net shot. And we got back to the bench. We're all sitting on the bench. And I leaned over to him like, Lou, next time you shoot, turn your bottom handle a little bit. And he looked at me. He laughed I had no idea what else I was even talking about. But, just for a little bit of humor. Just a little bit of humor to make him laugh. Let everybody laugh it off. Right. No matter how serious the situation. I'll try to find a little bit of humor in that. I'm down here in Houston. I'm teaching this class. Everyone's testing on this Saturday, and it's a life-changing test, and I'm teaching it. And everyone's nervous. And all week, I'm like, listen, you got this. And if you fail, so what? You get your results, you come right back and retake it. You can do this. I don't think people are told that enough. I don't think people are challenged enough. And it's so easy to give up. I mean, you as a police officer, I can't imagine some of the things you went through. I just, throughout my life, and especially now, where I'm at, which is insane.
Explain what you're doing right now.
So my full-time job is I'm welding program coordinator at the college. And at that college, I'm department chairman. So I oversee welding, HVAC, and autos. That's my main job. I also am an adjunct instructor at a community college in the city. So I'm there 2 days a week, along with my full-time job. And then I'm an adjunct instructor for the American Welding Society, where I teach these inspection classes. I've traveled all over. I've been to Poland. I do aerospace. I do structural steel, pipeline. I've gone all over. My boss and I at the school run a company called Techno Weld Services. We go out and do weld certifications, training, procedures. So that's another gig. I'm also working for another company that does X-ray and non-destructive testing, where I do CWI work, which is certified welding inspector work, and then X-ray work. So I get 5 W-2s a year and a contract or whatever.
Or 1099.
Yeah, 1099 from the AWS every year. So I got the 2 colleges, I got the pipeline company, I got my boss's company and mine, and then adjunct welding instructor for the American Welding Society. So, but the thing is, Andy, I tell you what, I wanted this. I'm not complaining. I wanted this. I love what I do. I love it.
I know.
And my work, it's not work. I know it's, these days I'm down here teaching this class. It's from 8 to 5. It's a 10-hour day, but it's not 10 hours. It's, for me, I try to make it enjoyable, and I'm meeting people, and they're going through a horrible time because this is a life-changing test that they're trying to take. There's engineers, there's doctoral structural engineers and metallurgists and welders. I'm seeing the gamut of everybody. And I could connect them by the end of the week and get something out of them. And I make these connections. I fish bass tournaments back home. I run OTH Hockey League. So I organize that, right? I email everybody. I get the contracts for the ice. So I'm doing that. I was our past chairman for the Chicago section. I'm our incoming district director. So I'll oversee Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, all the AWS activities and stuff like that. I love what I do. And so I grasp every opportunity I can to meet people and be better and to share everything I've always done and to push people to be better.
And that's remarkable too. And you're setting that example. And you're also doing something too for the students at the community college, right? Because you have a foundation.
Yes.
Or what? Please explain that.
Oh,
I know you spearheaded a golf tournament,
yes,
a fundraiser that I played in, and you did a phenomenal job with that, and it was fun.
So anybody that's watching or listening, I think kids nowadays don't see the value of the trades. And I tell everybody, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, well, those guys are all retired. Your uncle, right? The 150 operator. Mm-hmm. All these guys that I grew up idolizing are retiring. And there's nobody taking their places. So what we did, this was probably 5 years ago, myself and Amanda Young, who runs McNDT Pipeline. I was Chicago chairman at the time, and we needed like a rejuvenation, right? Let's get out to the communities and bring people back. There's all these companies that are asking for people, but not only do the people not want to go there, but the companies really don't want to reach out either. So there was like this gap. I mean, this is Chicago. It's so industrial. You know this. We were like, let's try to do a golf outing. Let's see what we can do. I've been in this industry long enough to know a bunch of people. I started reaching out to them. And my boss, his name's James Greer. He's past president of the American Welding Society. Just an absolute amazing human to me. Anybody that he talks to and reaches out to, just mentored me for the last 20 years of my life. And then we started raising money for student scholarship. But you got to have a cause or a purpose for why you're doing it. You just can't raise money and go spend it on cars. When you're in a welding program or plumbing or whatever the case is, you see these very struggling individuals, right? Nobody gets into the trades because they're rich. It's just it's rare. And being where we were, on the south side of Chicago, we saw students that we wanted to help. And I want them just to have a chance. If there's a chance to make their life a little bit easier, I'm all for it because I see what they're going through. I can kind of relate.
You want to plug them in.
Yeah, just give them an opportunity. Regardless of their struggles, I want to be involved with that. So we had started this golf outing in Chicago. So you got to have a foundation. It's called the James E. Greer Student Scholarship Foundation. And all the money goes to students in the Chicago area that are involved in trades classes, and anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. 10 people at a time, we give back and give them that scholarship money. And it is so rewarding. And I mean this, dude. I get emotional. And I'm telling you, I might get emotional on this. When you look at a single mom or a student that has to take the bus to school every day, or a student that can't afford the right equipment, or a student that will ask for like leftover lunch, but when people need the help but won't ask, right? And we did it when we had started this foundation and started the scholarships. It was a great excuse for me and for companies to get together to celebrate who we were, the industry, these major manufacturers that are involved with welding. But I tell you, Andy, there's nothing more rewarding than looking at a student and telling them, I could get you $1,000 for school. And $1,000 to you or I or anybody that's listening, it doesn't sound like much. It's a mortgage. It's half of a car payment. But when I get a student that comes off of when I get a student that comes off of public transportation in winter, in January, and comes in and looks at me and cries and thanks me for making his home life better and giving him motivation to come in. I've had that happen multiple times where these kids will come in that I couldn't even compare my childhood to theirs. And they look at me, and you would think that $1,000 is $1 million. They're paying for school, they're getting the equipment, they don't have to worry about it. Wherever they're working, which is not a great paying job, they can put that money to their mom. I mean, I've had people say, we paid 2 months rent because you paid with the scholarship money. Like, I could stay in this program because I don't have to move. You're like, when you think you got it bad, do you?
Yeah, right.
So that's a big motivation of why we did that. And I tell you, I've had so many kids come up to me, and I've been through some bad times. You've been through some bad times, but are they bad times?
No.
When you're riding a bus to try to go to school, to try to get a job, and somebody gives you money, and you use that money to continue your education, to be better, and the money that you didn't spend goes to rent so they can live in the same apartment, that's a bad time.
Now, can people still donate to that foundation?
Yeah, so we're having it again this May 9th.
Yeah, so go ahead and explain, like, if people can't make it, like, how, can they still donate?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go on.
Explain.
Yeah, they can go on the AWS Chicago website, and the registration page is up now. It's a great cause. Anybody that thinks it's just a golf outing, it's not.
No, you guys did a great job.
We do the golf outing to bring industry professionals together, but the main thing is literally, we don't make anything. We don't make any money. We don't do it for us. We do it to let people know that the Chicago American Welding Society is there. We're heavily involved in the community, but we want to give back. We want kids in trades, regardless of who you are, where you're coming from. We want people there. We need people. And so that's why we do that. It's again, we've had major companies come out and major companies donate. And the biggest thing is that they need to understand that their donations don't come to us. They go to kids that need it. They apply. We read their applications. We see them. They're going to our schools. It's not like, we just hand it out to just nobody. We make them write an essay of what they're doing and where they're going. We want those kids to stay in school, because some of these kids will just give up. You know, in our industry, it's probably just like police officers. Who wants to be a cop anymore? Right? I'm sure they're thirsty for people. Same thing with the trades. We need tradesmen. We need police officers. We need those blue collar people that don't mind putting in a hard day's work. You're not going to be rich, right? But you make a great living and provide for people. And so that's why we started it.
Where can people reach out to you if anybody had any questions, or if they want you to come out and speak or teach? Do you have an email, a phone number that you would like?
Absolutely. My cell phone number is 708-431-0894. And then my email is my last name, so it's VIAR18@att.net. And anybody that wants to get involved or just wants to reach out and see exactly what I do, I'll reach out to them back and just talk about it. It's funny. I was just thinking today, but I love you in my life. I'm so glad that whatever paths crossed and whatever barbed wire and embryonic sac you and I crawl out of, that we cross paths. Absolutely. Because you're a great friend of mine. I've met your friends that I've never known, and all of them made me feel good. You surround yourself with good people. I always feel like there's this little beacon that'll bring us back together. So I just want to thank you. I'm telling you, not only have you motivated me and made me better, I can talk to you. I know you don't judge me. And that means the world to me. You welcome me into your home. It means the world to me.
Well, of course, Dave. And you've always been a brother to me. We've always laughed. We've gotten choked up together, and we've shared stories. And like I said, God knows we've laughed. And we've laughed till we've almost hit the ground. And I wish you nothing but the absolute best in life. I appreciate your time. If anybody has any questions for Dave, if you want to hire him out, he knows everything about welding. He is a master welder. He knows that trade inside and out. Please reach out to him. And again, I'll put all my information, I'll put all Dave's information down in the description. And as always, please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you for tuning into my channel, and God bless.